Welcome to Todd Talks, where HVAC meets innovation. I'm Todd Sutherland from Tropic Supply, and today we're going to demystify mini splits. If you've ever looked at one and felt a bit unsure of what you were getting into, don't worry, you're not alone. Let's break it down and make sure your first mini split installation goes as smooth as possible. Mini splits have a bit of a reputation for looking different and operating in ways that aren't quite like traditional systems. When you first open one up, there's not much inside, just a control board and a bunch of sensors. Unlike your typical split systems, these units use inverter-driven motors, meaning they don't just turn on and off at full speed. Instead, they ramp up and down to meet the demand, giving you smoother operation and better energy efficiency. It's all thanks to a bit of DC magic that keeps things running efficiently and quietly. Now, you've probably heard terms thrown around like mini split, multi-split, and VRF. Let's clear that up. All mini splits fall under the variable refrigerant flow category, or VRF. They use inverter compressors to control refrigerant flow, which is a fancy way of saying they're super efficient. But when you have multiple indoor units that connect to a single outdoor unit, that's a multi-split. One thing to remember is that unlike the more sophisticated VRF systems, multi-splits require all indoor units to either heat or cool at the same time. They don't have that fancy technology to heat one room while cooling another. Now here's an important tip. Mini splits are all about precision, especially when it comes to charging them. These systems are classified as critical charge, meaning you need to charge them by weight. This is different from the usual methods like measuring superheat or subcooling. You'll want to follow the manufacturer's spec to the letter, especially if your line set's longer than standard. Get this right, and you're well on your way to success. Another unique feature is the placement of the expansion valve. You'll find it in the outdoor unit, not the indoor one. Now that might seem odd, but it actually helps reduce noise and save space. Plus, it means that both refrigerant lines will be either high pressure or low pressure, depending on whether you're in cooling or heating mode. It's just one of those quirks you get used to with mini splits. If you're measuring superheat, don't be surprised if you see really low numbers, sometimes as low as 0 to 5 degrees. Mini splits are designed to run at lower superheat levels to maximize efficiency. It might feel strange at first, but trust me, it's normal for these systems. Just make sure that the unit has an accumulator on the suction side to protect the compressor. Now, condensation can be an issue with mini splits if the refrigerant lines aren't properly insulated. Be sure to wrap them tightly, especially in areas where the lines are colder than the dew point, and each line needs to be insulated independently. Now, if you've installed a condensate pump, keep an eye on that float switch. It's there to cut power to the unit if water builds up, gets out of hand, preventing damage. Now, one thing that really sets mini splits apart from traditional systems is how they handle defrost in the heating mode. With a standard heat pump, you'll see the unit switch into defrost mode pretty regularly. Mini splits, on the other hand, use a more sophisticated method that allows them to stay in the heating mode longer. They've got more sensors and smarter controls, so they don't have to defrost as often. Now, when it comes to controlling these systems, forget about the old RG, Y, W terminals that you see on your thermostat. Mini splits don't use them. They're all about wired or remote controllers that send signals in a different way, either through shielded wires or infrared remotes. And if you're replacing a remote, it's usually a plug-and-play process with no extra programming needed. And finally, when it comes to leaks, the biggest culprit are often the flare connections. Many experienced installers recommend redoing the factory flares and using a good thread sealant. It's a simple step that can save you a lot of headaches down the road. Now, before we wrap up, I want to give a special shout out to Leanna Schwallenberg, an HVAC service technician with the K Company in Akron, Ohio. Leanna specializes in residential service, but also helps out with commercial maintenance and repairs as needed. This Todd Talk was inspired by an article that she wrote for ACHR News, where she shared these valuable insights from her nearly decade-long experience with mini splits. Thanks for tuning in to Todd Talks. If you're ready to take on your first mini split job, remember these key tips to ensure success. And as always, if you have questions or need further guidance, feel free to reach out to Tropic Supply. Remember, keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in HVAC, and I'll see you on the next Todd Talk.